I'm not their father. The words stuck to my throat like dry bread, scratching their way up, but never making it out. I remember staring at that manila envelope, the DNA lab logo in the corner, the bold black letters screaming back at me. It felt like the kitchen lights in my Dallas home dimmed, and the whole world leaned sideways. My wife, the woman I'd built 15 years of life with, was in the other room humming like nothing was wrong. And my kids, our kids, were asleep upstairs, their drawings still taped to the fridge. I'll back up. My name's Jack Reynolds. I'm a mechanic in Garland, just outside Dallas. I grew up here, a Friday night football kind of kid, with grease under my nails and a dream of owning my own shop one day. That dream came true. I had a steady business, loyal customers, and a name people trusted. And then there was Laura. She walked into my life at a 4th of July cookout. Her cousin was dating my best friend, and she stood out like a sparkler in the Texas dark. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, jean shorts, and that laugh you could hear over the crackle of fireworks. I was hooked from the first minute. She asked me if I wanted another Bud Light, and the way she said it, like she already knew I'd say yes, felt like fate. We dated through late-night diner runs, Whataburger drives at 2 a.m., and road trips down to Austin with the windows rolled all the way down, country music blasting. I proposed at a Dallas Stars hockey game on the Jumbotron. She cried, the crowd cheered, and I thought life had written me the perfect script. We married young, but back then it felt like the only thing that made sense. The first few years were golden. We'd grill burgers in the backyard, play cornhole with the neighbors, and collapse onto the couch on Sunday nights, half asleep watching ESPN highlights. When our first kid Mason was born, I swear I cried harder than Laura did. Holding that tiny boy with his dark eyes and soft little fists, I thought I'd been handed the universe. 2 years later came Lily, then Caleb not long after. 3 kids, noisy mornings, sticky fingers on the furniture, and more crayon drawings than our fridge could handle. From the outside, we looked like any suburban American family. Pickup truck in the driveway, Laura volunteering at the PTA, me coaching Little League. But looking back, I realized little cracks started forming early, ones I ignored. Laura had this way of drifting off during family dinners, staring at her phone when she thought no one noticed. She started going out for girls' nights more often, sometimes coming home late smelling faintly of cologne I didn't own. At first I brushed it off. Every marriage has rough patches, right? Besides, she'd smile and kiss me the next morning, acting like everything was fine. There were small changes too. She started dressing differently when she went out, tighter jeans, new tops I hadn't seen before. I caught her laughing at texts she wouldn't share, flipping her phone over when I walked into the room. Once I reached for her purse to grab her keys, and she snatched it back so fast you'd think I'd grabbed a rattlesnake. But I kept telling myself not to be paranoid. We had 3 kids, a house, a whole history together. I convinced myself she was just restless, maybe lonely, with me working long hours at the shop, but the feeling wouldn't leave. At night, I'd lie awake listening to her breathing beside me, wondering who else might be on her mind. I'd hear Mason padding down the hall in his little pajamas asking for water, and I'd push the thoughts away because being dad was my whole identity. I couldn't let suspicion poison that. The real shift came one afternoon at Mason's school carnival. I was standing by the dunk tank, sweating in the Texas heat, when one of the other dads clapped me on the shoulder and joked, "Man, Mason looks just like you." Well, maybe not exactly. He laughed and walked off, but the words stuck like a thorn. I'd always noticed Mason had lighter hair than mine, and Lily's eyes were green like no one in my family. Caleb, too. His features didn't quite line up with mine, or even Laura's side, but I dismissed it. Genetics are weird, right? Still, the thought festered. Late at night, I started Googling DNA test at home, scrolling through forums on betrayal stories, Reddit threads full of men who discovered they weren't the fathers they thought they were. I'd close the laptop, sick to my stomach, telling myself I was crazy. But the seed was planted. Then one Saturday, Laura left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. It buzzed. Normally, I respected her privacy, but something in me snapped. I picked it up. The message was from a contact saved as Anna, but the text read, "Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you." My blood ran cold. I set the phone down before she came back, but my heart hammered the rest of the day. She was cheating. I felt it in my bones. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I played the waiting game, trying to gather my strength, trying not to let my kids feel the storm brewing inside me. But my mind kept circling back to that other possibility, the one I'd tried to bury. What if the kids weren't mine? Weeks went by with me stuck in limbo, smiling at baseball practice, flipping pancakes on Saturday mornings, while inside I was breaking. I ordered a DNA test kit online, telling myself it was just to put my mind at ease. I swabbed the kids' cheeks while they giggled, thinking it was a funny science experiment. I mailed the samples off, and every day after that felt like walking around with a ticking bomb in my chest. When the envelope finally arrived, I knew before I opened it. Some instinct deep down already knew the truth, but seeing it in black and white shattered me. 0% probability for all 3 kids. Not one of them was biologically mine. I sat at that kitchen table, the paper shaking in my hands, trying not to throw up. Upstairs, I could hear Mason and Lily arguing over crayons, Caleb squealing with laughter. The sound used to make me feel like the richest man in the world. Now it felt like a cruel joke. The woman I trusted most had built our entire life on a lie, and suddenly, nothing I thought I knew was real. That was the moment my story stopped being about suspicion and started being about survival. Because I realized I wasn't just a husband betrayed, I was a father robbed, and no matter how much it hurt, I had to find out the full truth of what Laura had done. I remember the night I slid that DNA envelope back into the drawer, like I was hiding a weapon. My hands trembled every time I opened that drawer to grab a fork, like the paper itself might scream the truth out loud. But once the shock wore off, something else took root inside me, a cold, sharp determination. Laura had built 15 years of our marriage on lies, and I wasn't going to stumble through the wreckage blind. I needed evidence, not just for me, but for when the time came to confront her, to look her dead in the eye, and show her the proof she could never deny. The first thing I did was watch her. I mean really watch her, before I'd let things slide. Late nights with the girls, mysterious texts, new clothes. Now I cataloged every detail. Tuesday evening, she claimed to be at yoga, but when I checked the studio's schedule online, the last class ended an hour before she usually came home. Fridays, she said she was running errands, but I found gas receipts in her purse from places across town, nowhere near Target or Kroger. Then there was her phone. Laura guarded that thing like it was a vault. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, even flip it over face down when we ate dinner. But the funny thing about iPhones is that if you've ever synced them to a shared iPad, sometimes the messages bleed through. And one Sunday morning, while Lily and Caleb were sprawled on the couch watching cartoons, I picked up the old iPad in the den. I told myself I was just checking the weather. What popped up instead made my stomach churn. A string of messages between her and a contact saved as Anna. Only it wasn't Anna. No woman talks like this. Can't stop thinking about last night. You taste better than anything. My grip tightened on the iPad. Then another. Meet me at the La Quinta again Wednesday. Same room, La Quinta, a budget hotel off I-30, the one with the broken neon sign that flickered El Kun. I'd driven past it 100 times without a second thought. Now it felt like a crime scene. I didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, I made a plan. Wednesday night, I told Laura I'd be staying late at the shop. I kissed her on the cheek, pretended nothing was wrong, then followed her from a distance as she pulled out of the driveway. My truck idled a few cars back while she merged onto the highway. Sure enough, she took the exit for La Quinta. My heart pounded so hard I thought the steering wheel might shake loose. I parked across the street in the lot of a closed diner, lights off, watching as she disappeared inside. 20 minutes later, a man walked in. Tall, broad shoulders, baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see his face, but I saw enough. I snapped some pictures on my phone, my hands shaking. Then, after what felt like hours, I watched them come out together, laughing, brushing against each other like teenagers sneaking home from prom. I went home before her, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. When she finally walked in, tossing her purse on the counter with that fake tired smile, I almost broke. I almost slammed the photos down right then, but something in me said, not yet. Build the case. Don't let her wriggle out of it. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I could. Credit card statements, charges for hotel rooms, dinners at places we'd never gone together, gas receipts from the far side of Dallas. I even bought a small voice-activated recorder off Amazon and slipped it into her SUV under the seat. The first few days, it picked up nothing but the hum of the engine and her singing along to the radio. Then one Friday night, I sat in the shop's office with my earbuds in and nearly crushed the recorder in my fist, Laura's voice, and a man's. Their laughter filled the cab, followed by muffled words I could barely make out. But then came his voice, clear as day. "He has no idea, does he?" And her response, "Not a clue. He's too busy fixing cars to notice." My chest burned like I'd swallowed gasoline. I wanted to storm into the house, throw her bags on the lawn, scream the truth until the neighbors called the cops. But I forced myself to stay calm, because the betrayal wasn't just infidelity, it was paternity. Those kids upstairs, the ones I'd read bedtime stories to, the ones I'd coached in Little League, weren't mine by blood. And if Laura was capable of that scale of deception, then I needed every weapon I could gather for what was coming next. I hired a private investigator. At first, I felt dirty, like I was the one betraying her. But the PI, a wiry old guy named Dale who chewed toothpicks like they were nicotine patches, put me at ease. "You're just collecting truth," he said. "Nothing wrong with that." And within 2 weeks, he handed me a manila folder thick with photos. Laura and her lover leaving hotels, kissing in his truck, even holding hands in broad daylight at a shopping center. The kicker? The man was someone I knew. Not well, but enough. His name was Rick Thompson, a guy who had come by the shop a few times for break work, always slick with cologne and flashy watches. A man I'd shaken hands with, who'd looked me in the eye. That betrayal hit me harder than the rest. I remember sitting at the kitchen table late one night, the PI's folder spread out beside the DNA report. 2 separate stacks of evidence, but together they painted a picture of absolute ruin. My marriage was a lie. My family was built on fraud. And I was sitting there like the last one at the party who hadn't heard the joke. The hardest part was facing the kids. Every night, Mason would crawl onto the couch with me and asking if I wanted to play catch in the yard the next day. Lily would tug at my sleeve, wanting me to braid her doll's hair. Caleb would fall asleep on my chest, drooling on my shirt. They were mine in every way that mattered, except the one the law cared about. And that truth sat in my gut like a stone. I knew I couldn't keep it bottled up forever. I started dropping little questions to Laura, just to see how she'd react. "How's Anna?" I asked once, casual as flipping a burger. She froze for a split second, then forced a laugh. "Oh, she's fine." "Why?" Another night, I mentioned La Quinta out of nowhere. She almost dropped her wine glass. Each reaction confirmed what I already knew, but the confrontation still loomed like a thunderstorm on the horizon. I rehearsed it in my head 100 times, slamming the photos down, shoving the DNA papers in her face, demanding she tell me why. But every time I looked at the kids, I hesitated. Timing mattered. I had to make sure the truth landed where it couldn't be denied or spun. The breaking point came one Thursday evening when Laura was in the shower. I heard her phone buzz on the counter. Against every instinct, I picked it up and unlocked it with the passcode I had memorized. There it was, a thread of messages with Rick, the latest one, sent just an hour before. "He's so clueless. Can't wait till we can stop pretending." My vision blurred, my hands shook. I snapped photos of the screen with my own phone. Every last damning word. That was the final piece I needed. The whiskey burned down my throat that night, but not enough to dull the fire raging in my chest. I sat there staring at the mountain of evidence I had built. DNA reports, photographs, receipts, screenshots, recordings. It looked less like a marriage and more like a criminal case file. And maybe that's what it was, 15 years of fraud, betrayal, and humiliation. Tomorrow wasn't just going to be a fight between husband and wife. It was going to be a trial by fire, and I wanted witnesses. So I called my lawyer first thing in the morning, Mark Bennett, old college buddy, now a sharp-tongued attorney who'd cut his teeth in Dallas courtrooms. I told him everything, from the DNA results to the PI's folder. There was silence on the line, then a low whistle. "Jack," he said, "you don't just have a case, you have a nuke. You ready to use it?" I was. We planned it out like a football play. Friday night, Laura thought we were going to dinner with friends at a steakhouse downtown. Instead, I booked a private dining room. Mark came along, posing as another guest, folder in hand. I wanted her cornered in a place she couldn't scream her way out of, somewhere public enough to stop her from storming off before I got what I needed. When we arrived, Laura was dressed to kill, red dress, hair curled, perfume strong enough to choke the waiter. She was glowing, the kind of glow a wife shouldn't have walking into a dinner with her husband. unless she'd been living a double life that gave her something to smirk about. I kept my face neutral, let her order her wine, let her think it was just another Friday. Halfway through the appetizers, I leaned forward and said, "Laura, I need to talk to you about something important." She tilted her head, that practiced smile on her rose. "What is it, Jack?" I slid the first piece of evidence across the table, a gas receipt from a station 20 miles out of town, dated the same night she'd claimed to be at book club. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quick. "So, I must have stopped for gas on the way home from somewhere." Then came the credit card statement, hotel charges, dinners, the La Quinta room numbers circled in red ink. She shifted in her chair, eyes flicking toward the waiter, like maybe she could escape through him. "This isn't what it looks like." I didn't flinch. "Really?" "Because it looks exactly like what it is." Mark leaned back, arms crossed, silent but solid at my side. Next, I pulled out the photographs. Laura's face drained as she stared down at herself in grainy PI shots, her body leaning into Rick's, her lips on his. She swallowed hard, fumbling for words. It's not you," I cut in. My voice was ice. "Not your hair, your clothes, your damn laugh. Who is it then, Laura? A twin sister I never knew about?" Her eyes darted between me and the evidence, looking for a crack in the wall I'd built. There wasn't one. And then I dropped the hammer. I slid the manila envelope across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. The DNA results stared back at her, black and white proof that every child we'd raised together carried none of my blood. Her hand shook. The wine glass tipped, spilling across the table, staining the tablecloth crimson. She slapped it upright, but the damage was done. The stains spread like her lies. 15 years, Laura?" I said, my voice low but sharp enough to cut steel. 15 years of lies. Not one of those kids is mine. You robbed me of fatherhood. You robbed them of the truth. And you think I won't burn this all down?" Tears welled in her eyes, but instead of guilt, I saw calculation. "Jack, please, think about the kids. They love you. You're their dad in every way that matters." "They love me because I was their dad," I snapped. "But you—" I jabbed a finger at her. "You turned me into a babysitter for another man's children. Do you even know who their real father is?" She hesitated, lips trembling, and then, like the final knife, she whispered, "Rick." The room tilted for a second. Hearing his name confirmed was like taking a bat to the ribs. Mark scribbled notes, stone-faced. The waiter froze by the door, eyes wide as the drama unfolded. I almost laughed. This was better than any soap opera he'd ever seen. I leaned back in my chair, staring at her across the wreckage of spilled wine and shattered trust. "Do you realize what you've done?" She tried to reach across the table, tears streaming now, but I pulled my hand back. "Jack, I made mistakes, but we can work this out." "Work this out?" My laugh was hollow. "Laura, this isn't a rough patch. This is a demolition. And guess what? I brought my lawyer." Mark slid the folder across, his voice calm but cutting. "Mrs. Reynolds, you should know Jack has all the evidence he needs. Affairs, paternity fraud, deception spanning over a decade. If this goes to court, and it will, you're looking at a divorce settlement that won't be kind to you." Her face twisted between rage and panic. "You can't do this to me. The kids, I interrupted, will know the truth. They deserve to know. They deserve to understand why their mother chose lies over family." Her voice rose, but I didn't let her get the last word. I stood, tossing my napkin on the stained table. "Enjoy your dinner, Laura. It'll be your last one with me as your husband." The waiter gasped when my chair scraped back. Laura buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Mark gathered the evidence neatly, tucking it back into the folder. And as I walked out of that steakhouse, the sound of her crying echoing off the polished wood walls, I felt something strange. Not victory, not relief, but a hollow kind of freedom. But the battle wasn't over. That confrontation was just the prelude. The real war would be fought in the courtroom, under the cold glare of the judge, where her lies would be dragged into daylight for everyone to see. The courtroom smelled of old paper and disinfectant, the kind of sterile place where truth and lies get washed clean under fluorescent lights. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a stiff gray suit, hands clasped so tight my knuckles whitened. Across the aisle, Laura sat with her lawyer, her hair pulled back, face pale, eyes darting everywhere but at me. The kids weren't there, thank God. Too young to see their mother's empire of deception collapse. Judge Martinez entered with the kind of presence that made even seasoned lawyers sit straighter. He was a broad man with a deep voice, the kind that cut through chatter like a gavel before it ever fell. When the clerk called my case, Reynolds versus Reynolds, I felt the floor tilt under my feet. This was it, the final reveal. Mark, my attorney, presented the evidence piece by piece, like laying bricks on a wall she couldn't climb. The DNA reports came first. He read the results aloud, each 0% probability echoing like a gunshot in the quiet room. I watched Laura's lawyer squirm, flipping through papers, looking for a loophole that didn't exist. Then came the photographs, projected on a screen for everyone to see. Grainy shots of Laura and Rick in parking lots, in diners, slipping into hotels, gas receipts, credit card bills. The audio recording of her voice laughing in the car with him, mocking me as too busy fixing cars to notice. My stomach churned hearing it again, but I didn't flinch. I wanted the judge to hear every syllable. When Laura finally took the stand, she tried to turn on the waterworks. Her voice trembled, her hands shook, and she repeated the same lines. "He's still their dad. Biology doesn't matter. I made mistakes, but I did it for love." The words rang hollow in the sterile courtroom air. Mark leaned forward. "Mrs. Reynolds, is it true that for over a decade, you knowingly deceived your husband into believing he was the biological father of 3 children?" Her eyes darted to the judge, then back to the floor. "Yes," she whispered. The gavel came down once, not for silence, but for punctuation. It was done. The divorce decree was swift. Assets split, though with the weight of fraud, the balance tilted in my favor. Custody was complicated. The judge ruled I had no legal obligation to support the kids financially, but he acknowledged the bond I'd built with them. It was up to me whether I wanted to stay in their lives. That was the hardest choice I've ever faced. Walking out of the courthouse that day felt nothing like triumph. Reporters weren't waiting, neighbors didn't clap me on the back, no parade rolled through Garland. Just me, my truck, and a silence so heavy it felt like lead. The house was empty when I got home. Laura had already packed her things. The kids were with her for the week, though I had visitation rights if I wanted. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd first opened the DNA results, and stared at the bare spot on the fridge where the kids' drawings had once been. The next few weeks blurred. The shop kept me busy, oil changes, brake jobs, the comforting rhythm of socket wrenches clicking, but nights were brutal. ESPN highlights hummed in the background while I drank Bud Light on the porch, staring out at the dark Texas sky. Neighbors gave me those looks, half sympathy, half curiosity, but no one really knew what to say. It was the kids who kept me from falling apart. Mason called me one night, his voice small and shaky. "Dad, are you mad at us?" I swallowed hard. "Never, buddy. Not once. This isn't your fault. You hear me? Not ever." DeLily sent me a crayon drawing in the mail. Our family, stick figures holding hands, with the words, "We love you, Dad," scrawled across the top. Caleb, too little to understand, just giggled when I picked him up for ice cream, smearing chocolate across my shirt like old times. They were still my kids, blood or not. And I decided right then I wasn't going to let Laura's betrayal rob me of them completely. Healing didn't come fast, but it came. Saturdays turned into pancake mornings again. Just me and the kids flipping batter on the griddle. We'd sit on the porch eating popsicles, sticky hands everywhere, laughing at nothing. I realized family wasn't in the DNA. It was in the day-to-day, in the memories we made even after the lies fell away. Laura tried reaching out. Emails, a few calls, always the same tone, regret mixed with excuses. I didn't bite. My lawyer handled the legal loose ends, and I kept my focus on moving forward. Rick vanished from the picture quickly, proving what I already knew. He was never interested in being a father. He wanted the thrill, not the responsibility. Months later, I found myself back at that 4th of July cookout where Laura and I had first met. Same backyard, same crackle of fireworks, same laughter spilling over the fences. But this time, I stood alone with a cold beer in my hand, watching the sky light up. And you know what? I felt lighter. The truth had scorched me, but it had also set me free. Life slowly settled into a new normal. I'd close the shop at 6, pick up the kids, grill burgers in the backyard, and let ESPN play on the TV while they dozed on the couch. Simple things, honest things. For the first time in years, I wasn't living inside someone else's lie. I learned something in all of it. Revenge wasn't about destroying the other person. It was about reclaiming yourself. Laura lost her marriage, her reputation, and eventually even the kids' trust. I lost the illusion, but I kept my peace. One night, sitting on the porch with a Bud Light sweating in my hand, Mason asleep inside, I let the Texas night wash over me. The cicadas buzzed, the air smelled of cut grass, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Because sometimes, peace isn't about what you gain, it's about what you finally put down.